Finally, we get into the headliner. And today I'm gonna tell you why and how did I paint the BMW Z4 e89 headliner. Before that, I wanna explain to you why I'm not in front of the car, but here, because I sold the car. The BMW Z4 officially sold and it was a great deal. After that, I purchased the BMW X5, which is, I had a preview on the channel. And now I have a Mercedes C-Class, which is, I will also share the video and the fixes I done to it. I still going with BMW, nothing really changing. I just decided to purchase a Mercedes C-Class and kind of have a rough comparison in between of the BMW and the Mercedes. And in the future, we're gonna have the video in terms of those cars. But for right now, let's continue with the headliner. First, the headliner in Z4 was disgustingly messed up. I don't know what exactly happened, but the way the convertible top harness looks, I suspect that someone worked on the harness. I think that the shell was removed while somebody was figuring out the electric issue on the roof. I had a similar problem, the roof stuck open halfway and I did fix it. So subscribe to see what exactly happened. As for the liner, you can see it's in the light gray color, or technically it was meant to be white. But instead of figuring out what its original color was, I thought it will be relatively easy to clean them. But it didn't happen. On top, if you would go hard on cleaning, you have a chance that the liner material will separate and sag. So I have nothing to lose and I can experiment with it and paint it. I did make a video on how to remove the headliner and it's on the channel, but it's not finished. After I remove half of the liner, the roof stopped working. Like I said, I will have the separate video on what happened and how to fix it. But back then, it wasn't fun. And back to the headliner. At first, I thought that the airbrush and the fabric dye will work perfectly nice. But unfortunately, I was wrong. And that's why. I got my airbrush and started blasting the liner with it. Of course, I did test it. I applied the dye on the hidden portion of the cloth material and it seems like it's working. But I would need a more concentrated solution. So in my head, it's simply do more layers. But the catch was that the all-purpose dye or fabric dye need a different approach. And the way the fabric dye works is basically you take the cloth, you dip it into the bath with it, dilute it with the water and let it soak there. Like, it did work with the airbrush, but unfortunately we had some artifacts. Those artifacts were kind of sparkling fill on a headliner when it was installed. Indeed it was matte black, but it did not look as good as I was thinking it would. On the top of that, the texture wasn't right. It was pretty harsh as a sandpaper. So that was another downside. And the last one, the whole container, the 7-ounce container, was gone for such a small portion of the liner. For the reason you have to spray it, like you have to spray a lot of that solution onto the liner with the airbrush. And it doesn't matter what you use, it's still, you need a lot. You need to basically flood it with the dye. The simple advice is don't use the airbrush with the dye, especially for the headliner. And the last one, if you're going to touch the headliner while you sit underneath and you kind of rub it, yes, the texture wouldn't be right, like I said, it feels like sandpaper. On the top of that, it's kind of peeling as the dust. So this solution is absolutely not worth it. So do not try it. Like I said, if you want to use the dye, make sure you dip the cloth into the bath with the dye, diluted with the water. But of course, this solution wouldn't work with the headliner. So I decided to use vinyl paint instead. I had the LVP BMW black interior paint. As advertised, it can be used on leather, cloth, plastic, and some other soft materials. I previously used it for plastic restoration, and those videos can be seen on the channel. They are pretty cool, in my opinion at least. Overall, this is my #1 paint. It has a premium feel and it looks good. So I committed and the output was really good. I'm not quite liking the way it feels if you touch it, which is rough, more like a plastic with a cloth texture. Also, if the liner is not sagging, the paint will definitely make it stronger or add the reinforcement. In conclusion, if you want to change the color of the headliner, it's not the best solution. Neither of those would be a good way to do that type of project if you just simply wanted to change the color of the headliner or paint it from white to black or vice versa, any other color. Neither dye, neither the LVP paint did a good job. It looks great, but it does not feel right. It feels like plastic, or in worst case, it also creating or producing some dust if you touch it. Another thing, if you will try to rub some microfiber towel onto it, it would trap the kind of separate pieces from the microfiber towel onto it. So you will need to spend a lot of time to cleaning that the headliner if it's got dirty. In my case, I think there was one of not many solutions, if not the only one. It was easy and fast and relatively cheap because I looked online. It's really hard to find a replacement part. Other solution, it would be change the actual cloth, but like I said, I decided to go this route and it worked, and it looks great, so I have no complaints. But would I do it second time? No, I probably would go with replacing the cloth or the liner itself. Also, if you guys have any suggestions on how to accomplish that project with better outcome or output, please leave me a comment below. Otherwise, we're done for today. I hope you did like the video and learn something from it. And if so, make sure to put that like button there and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.